What's going on, everybody? My name is Anthony Sabatino, the host of the Anthony Sabatino Show. We have an amazing guest on today, something a little unique to the show that we've yet to have. Her name's Kendal, and I'm really excited to have a great conversation with her and, basically dig into some of the details of her life and her career in music. So, Kendal, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm amazing. Thank you. Thank you. So I like to start the show off this way, just so the listeners and the watchers actually too can get some context on who you are. Interestingly enough, we have a mutual friend in Sophia who was the episode, I believe, 5 of the podcast. So or 6 actually, I believe. So that's really cool. But just to start off the context for everybody watching and listening who doesn't know you, just give a little bit of background, who you are, what you do, and we'll get into it from there.
So I am a pop country singer-songwriter from Pottstown, Pennsylvania, which means that I write all the songs, all the original songs that I sing. And I also do solo acoustic gigs throughout Pennsylvania, which is really fun. And then since COVID happened, I've actually got into some social media influencing, which is like using my social media accounts to promote brands and products, companies, things like that. So that's a little me in a nutshell.
That's really cool. And so it's funny, I was actually planning on asking you that a little bit maybe further into the conversation, but since you brought it up, I actually want to touch on that quickly, and then we'll maybe talk about where you got your inspiration, different people you work with, things like that. But in terms of social media, so background wise, right, for my audience, we have a very entrepreneurial, branding, marketing type audience. So I love always being able to touch on topics like that when we can, especially when it's contextual to the conversation. So in your case, where did you kind of get that start in, influencing and doing things for different brands, things like that?
So, it's funny. It's this really strange job that has become a job now.
Yeah.
It's like I get paid to promote products. So when COVID happened, obviously I'm a performer, and so I couldn't do that. And so I started playing virtual shows on my Facebook page. That's how I kind of started influencing. And so I would bring my guitar to restaurants in the area that were still serving takeout, because we weren't allowed to dine indoors at that point. This was in like the heat of 2020 when it happened. Right. Yeah. And so I would take my guitar, and it was just me, followed all the protocol. There was no one else in the room. It was like me and my phone. And I would like taste test some of their like takeout food and like try to get people in the area to go and buy and support your local restaurants that were struggling pretty hard at that point. So that's what, and it was weird, and I'm a big foodie, and so I reached out to restaurants that I love their food or that I played at in the past, and I was like, yo, I have this weird idea, and I'm super bored, obviously, because I can't perform live in person. So I was like, can I do this? And we can stream it on Facebook. So that's what I did for a while, and then I started looking at my Instagram account. And I have almost 25,000 followers on there. And so I have this huge like fan base of people that I can reach while I'm sitting at home, not being able to play live. And I was like, how can I talk to these people? What can I say? It's such a huge platform. And again, started teaming up with brands for promotion who, the normal way, because we couldn't meet in person, we couldn't do events. So I was like, hey, I started reaching out to people. They were reaching out to me, and monetized my Instagram, which I never would have thought of before COVID. So it's interesting how I kind of found it.
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations, because there's so many people out there, right, that got faced with an opportunity where their main source of income, was performing, doing something live in person. And then, the pandemic hit, and they had to either adapt or die, basically, right? And you obviously did a great job, and so creative, right? I'm a big fan of creativity, like anything that you can do that's somehow out of the box, something a little bit unorthodox to get your name out there. I mean, you definitely hit the nail on the head there, and at least in my opinion, that's awesome.
Right. Well, and it's also like I had a lot of time because my job was not something that you could easily transfer to an at-home situation. So I did have, when it hit and it happened and we were obliterated, I had a lot of time, like you were saying, to be creative.
Yeah.
Because I literally had absolutely nothing to do. And I'm sitting at home and I'm like, how can I still do something with my craft and not have to do, because I started looking at like other jobs and other things that were like maybe part-time work, things that were still open that needed work. And I was like, you know, how can I use my art and what I've already built and just use it in a different medium or a different way? And I also thought if I could jump on it really fast and be one of the first to do it, I'd be ahead of the game. So that's also kind of what I was thinking.
I mean, couldn't have said it better myself. I think speed to innovation is the key to most things, you know, and that's basically what you just said. Really cool. And then so from Instagram, right, you obviously built up an amazing audience there, you know, got some brand deals going on there. You're verified, which is obviously a big accomplishment, which, you know, holds some credibility for sure. And then let's talk about this a little bit, just touch on it. What's going on with TikTok, right? Because I know one of your songs went pretty big there. So how did that kind of come out?
So that all happened again during COVID was when it exploded. And I loved that was the song kind of to do it, to blow up, because the line is, if you throw me to the wolves, I'm going to come back the leader of the pack. And the song's called Leader of the Pack. And I kind of just felt like the place that we were all in at that point, like resonated with that line. Yeah. And so like, it's obviously available on TikTok under Sounds. And I think it was a wolf, like they have a ton of like wolf sanctuaries and like zoos and things have TikTok accounts. And I think one of the first to use it was this huge wolf account. And it like blew up and it got like a lot of views. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And then from there, it kind of just like spiraled because of that very first video, I think. Yeah. And then it was a lot of dogs. And then some of them weren't serious. Some of them were funny. Yeah. Like some of them, they had like the tiniest dog, like leading the pack. Like it was like, again, like the creative thing, there's a lot you could do with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it just kind of like took off from there. And again, this is not my TikTok account is still kind of pitiful at this point. Yeah. It's not, it doesn't have much going on. I think I had one video take off and it hit 19,000 views, which is like not that much, but that's my big claim to fame on my own videos was 19,000. So I'm real proud of that.
Listen, hey, it's better than zero, right? I think a lot of people, they're both into the extremes with TikTok, right? They're either completely all in, they blow up on day one, you know, or they are constantly struggling. And weirdly enough, I'm kind of in the middle too, right? I didn't really have anything that blew up too strong either. I had a few videos that went a little up there on the thousands of views, but nothing really crazy. I think too that, to your point with like the examples of, you know, little dogs being associated with that song and things like that, being leader of the pack, that is what TikTok I think brings so much to the table, is it allows an outlet for creativity and videos of that nature to have an outlet and shine some light on it. And the amount of creativity and just people and brands that have come about from TikTok specifically, without TikTok they would have never been a part of society, or at least publicly. It's amazing. So the fact that your song got that much, you know, listenership from it, it's worth it, you know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there was like a prank video and there was like, and then there was sports with leading the pack, like, you know, skateboarders and all sorts of things, like using it. And it's like in ways that, like you were just saying, I never would have thought of it that way. You know, but people hearing that lyric, or not even just mine, people hearing like the songs or the things and thinking, you know what I could do with that? Like, you don't know, you kind of just put it out into the universe and you see how people resonate with it in different ways. And so it obviously means something very specific to me because I wrote it. Sure. But at the same time, once you put it out, it's like, you can't really control what people think of it or how they, you know, when they listen to it or what they're seeing or hearing in their head. And you kind of just have to let it grow and expand, and it's really cool to watch that. So yeah,
so cool. All right, well, listen, let's pivot a second, because I wanted to get some, you know, context, you know, where your influence came from, a lot of the, you know, kind of music you're into. But it's funny, I just wanted to jump into that conversation because you brought it up. I think it's so important, and everybody who's creating right now, I think, can take something from what you just said in your situation and get something from it. Because you're right, as soon as it's out there, it's kind of out of control. It can be whatever it is or whatever it's not, and it's basically up to, I don't want to say the algorithm, but it's up to the people who are using it creatively.
It is. Yeah. It is an algorithm thing too. You see it like snowball into this thing that catches on. You're like, wait, come back. And it's like, it's gone. You can't, you got to just go with it.
You're right. You're right. All right. So let's talk about, your upbringing, right? So was there any influencer type, not influencer, but, an artist or someone that you really looked up to in the musical sense that kind of shaped your vision of what you wanted to be as an artist yourself?
So I always say this person first, and everyone is always like real surprised, but because I am pop country, I think they're expecting it to be who I do love, Reba and Dolly and Shania Twain. But my biggest influence on even like me as a person is Whitney Houston.
Okay.
Yeah, I just like, I watched her interviews and like the way she carried herself. She never cared what anybody thought of her. She was always just very in your face, confident. And then like musically, like her voice is literally perfect.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just like the big power ballads and her outfits. And she was always just real fabulous. And I just would watch her, and it was a kind of like a connect where I was like, that's what I want to be. I want to be that. And so I kind of carried that with me, even like now, like today, I still kind of like, that's the type of artist that I want to be. And from there, I taught myself how to play guitar from watching Taylor Swift on YouTube.
Wow.
So it's like, I always say in a lot of my interviews, like I learned to sing from watching Whitney, but I learned to play guitar and write songs from watching Taylor. So it's like a good, it's like a good mixture of both of them, because Taylor does not have that huge colossal voice, but she does have a strong voice in that her songwriting is strong. What she's saying is strong. Her guitar playing is amazing. So it's like, I kind of took pieces of what I liked about both of them. And I was like, I'll take this, I'll take that. I'll kind of like compile myself from all these artists that I love. So yeah.
And so did you start performing like basically early? Did you start performing and loving the music you created very early on in life, or was it kind of a slow burn over time?
That's interesting. So I didn't really create music until I learned guitar.
Okay.
Because you need the musicality of it, I think. And I've never loved poetry. Mm-hmm. There's something like up in the air about poetry that I just don't really, there's something in me I don't really care for. You read a poem and you're like, what does this mean? It's up to interpretation of each person. And I'm like, no, but what does this mean though? And like, there's something frustrating about poetry. So I never really like wrote in that way until I learned guitar. So before I did that, it was purely karaoke. I did karaoke contests. Like I would do talent shows and sing to karaoke. Like karaoke was my thing. And I feel like back when I was a kid and growing up, karaoke was very much maybe like a bigger deal socially than it is now.
Yeah.
Like everyone was singing to karaoke and to tracks. So now I feel like a lot of people do pick up an instrument, which I think is interesting.
It is. So I don't mean to like go off on a tangent here, but it's funny you brought up about poetry. One of the things I'm really fascinated by right now, it's something that I'm kind of thinking about in my own head, is this idea of, and you might be able to relate to this as an artist in general. Let's say, you're putting out music, because I would assume, right? I've never wrote a song, but I would assume writing a song and creating music and having that blend of, the layers of a symphony, basically you're creating from scratch. It's all sourcing from some feeling you're feeling inside, right? It's something you want to express. And one of the things I find most interesting is at the end of the day, I feel like those words in that symphony at some level isn't giving the full feeling a good service, right? There's almost something left to be desired just by nature of you saying it. However, the contradiction that I've found most fascinating is to not say it or to not express it is almost like it would destroy you, right? So it's like this weird paradox of you want to give everything, you want to write this beautiful song, you hope it touches every person's soul, and at the same time it's still not the full picture of what you're feeling inside. I don't know if you've ever felt something like that, but something I'm really interested in right now.
So I agree with you. And I think that also stems from, at least like just with me, it's like you can only, if you're going to write a really great song, like you have to really hone in on a moment or a feeling. And I feel like so much of like experience and relationship and connections, it's so many different things happening together and pulling in at the same time. But songwriting is like, at least for me, because I'm trying to write commercial pop country, like,
Sure.
it's got to be a clear hook. You've got to be saying something real. It can't be real heavy. It has to be easily relatable and understandable, and something that people can put themselves into. And I feel like if it gets too convoluted, it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's what I would think, right? And then you're kind of on stage, you're pouring your heart out into something, and then you're kind of playing half and half, right? You want to have that clear hook that's working for the commercial sense, and then you also have all this passion inside that you're trying to express. I can imagine it's part of being an artist, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard to, it's funny because it's like, you as an artist, you want to crack yourself open, and you want to be vulnerable, and you want to be super honest. And not only for people listening to what you're writing, but because it's you writing it, you want to be honest with yourself.
Right.
And then you have all these songs, and kind of segueing, you pitch these songs to these label people after you've literally poured your heart out and cracked your soul open in front of complete strangers. And then they go, that sucks. That's not good enough. Try again. And you're kind of just like, I wrote this when I, whatever the reason, felt alone, went through a breakup, whatever. If it's that kind of song. And then they kind of just, like, the rejection is hard for people who are so innately emotional and vulnerable and sensitive. And so it's such a strange business to be in. Like, you're an artist, but you have to be tough, but you also have to be vulnerable. Like, it's a very weird, it's a weird thing to be.
I can imagine. And so did you, in terms of, your pop country style now, were you always that, or did you kind of evolve over time to become where you are now?
So, because when I started creating music, I was pop country. So when I started writing songs, I was already pop country. But when I was doing the karaoke stuff, I mean, I was singing like Celine Dion and Mariah Carey and like all of those big, like, I guess they were like 90s divas. I don't know what you call that group of women, but it was just like all of them. I like Diana Ross and I like Madonna. And that's kind of just the stuff I would karaoke to.
Yeah.
And it was more about showing off that I could sing, more so than showing up with my boombox being like, I'm a pop artist. Because I don't really think I felt like an artist when I was doing that. I was literally parroting other women. And again, like at 13, when I was singing all by myself, Celine Dion, I had no idea what that song meant. There's no possible way I could connect to those lyrics, but I was singing some of those things. And I feel like if you're an artist, you have to connect with what you're doing. If you're a real artist, you have to believe in what you're doing. So yeah, I didn't understand any of those big I couldn't. There's no possible way. So I do feel like when I finally was like, great, I'm an artist, it's when I started songwriting and was pop country. So
makes sense. Cool.
So it's like I was and wasn't. I don't know. It's a weird thing.
Yeah. And so, speaking of, the artists of that caliber that you were emulating at the time, obviously, so I read your bio and everything. We know each other a little bit. So you've had the opportunity, right, to sing alongside some really amazing people and be able to work with some really people that I think a lot of people even listening would know very easily. What was that kind of like? Because I can imagine coming from a place of, doing karaoke, by yourself kind of thing and playing guitar, learning everything, and all of a sudden finding yourself working with these, juggernauts of the field. I can imagine it's probably a big hit, right? So what was that like?
It's so hard to explain because you get on stage and you do it, or the gig happens or the show happens, and it all happens so fast, and it really is like a blur.
Yeah.
Like you're kind of like, wow, and it's all kind of happening around you. But I remember the first big opening act that I got, and I had never done it before. And at the point that I showed up and was ready to do it, I was like, can I actually do this? Like I had convinced myself that I was ready, but I had no idea of knowing. Like I kind of thrust myself into this thing because I thought I could. And so I've read a lot of quotes about doing things before you feel ready is like a great idea. Because sometimes you are and you don't know it. So I did the gig and it went great and it went well. And so I submitted to a ton more. I wanted to keep doing it. I wanted to do it again. So I also compare it to like a such a rush of adrenaline. It's like I've never jumped out of a plane before, but I imagine like the feeling, it's like you're on such a high when you're doing that, and you're in front of a big crowd and you have them, and then you do a certain song, and sometimes I can feel that they're really listening to what I'm saying. And it's really powerful. So that's something that you do get out of those bigger crowds. Just the magnitude of you can like feel this weird connection. I don't know. It's really hard to explain, but there's nothing like it. It's amazing.
I can imagine. And so just for people listening, right, so they know exactly, who you've worked with. So let's say Keith Urban, for example, a big name, right? I think everybody in the country world knows who that is, and beyond country too. Did you ever had, like, what was his experience like working with him? Did you get any opportunity to see what he was like on the outside of performing, like any musical tendencies that you picked up from him, anything like that?
Oh, interesting. So I talked to him briefly that day. My mom was with me, and we like asked him a bunch of things, and like he was very, which I did not expect. He was very unrushed, like unhurried. Like I'm sure he had a packed day the day that I sang with him. And he didn't show it at all. We were just chilling. We were just hanging out. Wasn't rushed. Didn't feel like he was blowing me off. Like he was really talking to me. And that's something that I was very surprised by, because I had this like big speech plan to like blurt out to him, because I didn't think I would have any time to speak to him. I just didn't think that it would. So surprised by that. And he was very down to earth, and very like honest and open. He answered everything that I asked him. Just really cool, and like very easygoing, very open, like with his crew. I noticed too. Like they had a very good, what's the word I'm searching for? Like a rapport. They had a very good vibe with each other. It was just a great environment that I think probably starts with him, because he's the artist, I would assume. So he's created this great vibe and this great team. So that's something I learned from watching him for that brief day that I was there.
Do you think you kind of picked up on that too? Like any performances you did after him, you kind of reverted back to remembering, what you learned just watching him do his thing?
Yeah. So I also opened for Blake Shelton. And same thing, like these guys. So like I was, again, same deal, had like something planned in my mind. I want to get out that, I wrote with so-and-so, and I have this song, and thanks for letting me open the show for you. And I had this speech planned, or whatever I had. And because I thought that I was going to get a 2-second window, and he wasn't going to have time. Because he's who he is. And same thing happened. He really like took the time and listened to me and talked to me the day that I opened for him. And I was like amazed again, just so like unrushed, unhurried, unanxious. Was just like, it's like I ran into him at the restaurant. We were old friends, and we were just talking, and it was the same vibe as Keith. And I'm like, they're all doing this, and they're all amazing at it, and creating this environment where, people matter, their crew matters, the people, even just working at that show matter. And that's just something I learned from, again, briefly just being with them, for a short period of time. So that was really cool to see.
I mean, geez, that's awesome. Do you think like that vibe made you feel more comfortable performing in front of people, to that audience?
Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah. It was just relaxed.
Right.
It was just, and he was like, thanks for being here. I was like, he's thanking me. Just very like, and like in control. Like there was nothing that he seemed worried or anxious about. He was just like, we were all hanging out. They set the tone. They really did. They set the tone, and it works. That's why they are who they are, I think, because they carry themselves so well. So, and again, all of that had nothing to do with their music, which is also great.
Right.
So now they have that on top of these hit songs. I mean, like that's it. That's how to do it. So It's
That's
very cool to watch.
probably why people are so drawn to them, right? Like beyond just the lyrics of the songs themselves, it's probably, the personality they bring to the table is probably why they're so famous, basically.
Yeah, like I can't imagine, like you get a meet and greet with them and they treat everyone the way they treated me. Like that's incredible. That's so awesome. So yeah, I was watching them and I'm like, that's how I want to be. It's how
Right.
I want to be, so it's really cool.
That's amazing. Did you ever have any experiences on stage where, I don't know if you've ever experienced like stage fright or nerves to that extent? Were you ever that kind of person that you had to work through something like that?
So I am nervous. I am nervous being myself.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not nervous when I'm performing and I'm in artist mode at all.
Interesting.
So it's a little bit like acting. Like I've kind of created this version of myself that like I'm super confident in and comfortable with. And then when I take it off and, I show up to some casual party or a social thing and I'm myself, that's when I get like anxious or nervous or whatever. So it's actually the opposite. I was always like way more comfortable being on stage and performing than I was ever like just being myself. So it's like really weird.
Listen, I feel like it all has its beauty to it, right? Like the idea that you're able to do that is kind of cool,
Yeah.
Also understanding that, you've been in front of such large quantity of crowd, that a lot of people would shy away from that immediately. And the opportunities that probably stem from you being able to do that with relaxation, without any anxiety, you can't even understand like what the butterfly effect maybe gave you that you would have never done, that it just may have fell in your lap. So there's obviously pros to that, really cool. But you mentioned almost like character, like acting, right? Is that a field that you kind of want to see yourself in maybe in the future?
So I can't remember if I put this in the bio that I sent you, but
Yeah.
I do have a theater degree
Okay.
from Ursinus and was in a bunch of productions, did shows after I graduated. So I do think that wanting to be a storyteller in general, whether it's like songwriting or actual, physical live performance or acting, it's all like, here's a compelling story, whether it's made up or it's personal. But regardless, it resonates with you and you want to share it with people. So I do think that acting it's all so intertwined with each other.
Yeah.
So they're all skills that you need, whether, like for me, like my singing voice, I want to be at the forefront. So I always say like, I'm a singer who writes songs and plays guitar and acts a little bit. Like I want my singing voice to be up front, but they all aid in, each other, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I always like storytelling.
That's really cool. And I agree. Like I think that's probably the goal for a lot of people who are at the face of something, right? Where their face, their brand is whatever their income is basically, and whatever they're trying to create as a life, right? If they're the face of it, I think it's beneficial to have these different facets of it, right? And to have something they can call a pillar, right? So in your case, being your singing voice, but also you can play guitar, you can act, and being able to pour all of those things in, I think just makes a fuller cup, which is obviously better, right? Makes you feel more fulfilled as a creator and an artist. And I love that you said, storytelling, right? Because storytelling, I think, can be done in so many different avenues, right? Like beyond, it could be just how you communicate, just like, you experienced it with Keith and Blake, right? Like that idea of he was just telling a story of, hey, I'm down to earth right now. I'm here in the present time, making you feel that present with him and relax, like that could be also a version of storytelling. And I can imagine as you're writing songs, right? That's probably in the back of your head, right? When I'm writing a song, I want to make sure I'm telling the best story I possibly can to people that they can relate to, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the songs that I write that I think have become my favorites are ironically the ones that I think are catchy in a way that turns things on its head. So I like to tell like my stories are all kind of things that I hope people wouldn't expect when they heard the title. So like, come to your senses. My mom came up with that title, and you know, it's an idiom, it's a phrase when someone's like whatever, not making any sense, you're like, wait, come to your senses, you know, you need to be sane right now, whatever. And so again, with that, we took that literally in that song when we wrote it. And so it was like we use the five senses, and I'm talking to a guy, and it's, you know, smell my perfume or hear me do this and then see me do that. And then it's, you would see that we could be in a relationship and we could be a thing. You should come to your senses.
Right.
So we took that phrase literally, but that's not what that phrase normally means. So I do like doing that, where you do things that are like unexpected or surprising. So yeah,
that's really
cool. Kind of fun. Yeah.
And I think that's something that the listener maybe doesn't see at face value, right? And that's part of what makes a song so good, is when you can listen to it 100 times and, you know, learning something new about it every time and having it hit different points of your life that you've experienced listening from these lyrics, right? Because even when I listen to music, right, that's one of the things I realize is I could listen to the same song 50 times, and every time a different something comes up for me, and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of that. And like I think that source is from the artist who's writing the song, because it's so authentic and true to them, and by nature they designed it in your, like your, to your point of wanting it to be kind of, you know, turn the tables on what they think the face value definition of it should be, which is really cool. Like I think that's what's so beautiful about art, is it's never supposed to be face value. It's supposed to be so many layers attached.
Well, and it's also important to like with come to your senses, you would need to know what that phrase normally means also.
Right. Yeah.
In order to appreciate that I flipped it.
Yeah.
So I have also been told that sometimes my lyrics are too clever for their own good.
Okay.
And they're like, because I want to be commercial, and I have been told that people, like, you know, country music fans are going to be confused by leader of the pack. They're not going to understand it's like a metaphor, because this is pop music. You've got to be simple. And I've convoluted it, and I've been too smart now. Which does make me laugh sometimes. And like I have another song called Better On. And it's looking at the phrase you're better off without somebody. And I was like, where does that come from? What does that even mean if taken literally? Like you're better off versus what you're better on? And so I wrote a whole song about looking at if you're better on with someone. But you would need to like know the heads, you know what I mean? It's like, so, but I enjoy doing that, if only to entertain myself, maybe.
No, listen, it's funny you mentioned that. Like I see this a lot right now in like this everybody's creating, right? It's never been more of a creative time. You know, everybody's creating something. So, you know, I'm a believer. I don't know much about the commercial music space, so you might be able to tell me more about it, but I would imagine that the authenticity that comes from you doing things like that you really enjoy, right? Because I'm the type of person that if I listen to a song, I would rather the lyrics be so deep that makes me think, you know, as opposed to it just being so basic that I could, you know, I could write it on a wall and it would make no sense, you know. That I kind of look at it almost like the cream will always rise to the top. Like, do you know, like be you so much that I think it will come out in the end anyway. I don't know if that's how it works in the commercial world, but I would think like musically speaking, right? Or just artists, I think that would make sense, right?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's all of the artists that have kind of exploded, like Post Malone, like it's so unique. Taylor Swift, when she started doing her super pop country, her crazy stuff. Sam Hunt, like, you know, and I remember when Jason Aldean came out with his stuff, and everyone was like, this is rock, this isn't country, and he just kept doing it, and he's a huge star. So I do agree with you. It's almost like if you get immediate pushback from what you're doing, then you're onto something,
right?
It's almost like if people are confused by it or they hate it, you're like, wow, I got something here, like something cool, something unique. And then I think that people don't like it because it is commercial, it is pop, and it's not familiar. So if you do things that aren't close to the genre, I think people listen to it and they because they're not used to it, they're confused, they don't like it, your ear isn't adjusted to it. Because now when I listen to some of these things that were groundbreaking, they don't sound that groundbreaking anymore because we've grown accustomed to it.
Sure.
So I almost think like if you get pushback from your stuff and you put it out and you're like, people are like, what is this? You're like, wow, I'm doing something. I'm on to something right now. So
I
don't
love
know,
that.
that's my theory.
No, I love that theory, and I agree with 100%. And you can tell me if I'm right on this, because I look at it. So I do a lot of consulting for brands, and one of the things that I've seen as a thesis for almost all of them is that if you look at like what social media has been, which is where the attention is, for like the past 10 years, it's been said and done. We know social media is social media at macro, right? And then the people who are doing things differently, which is why being creative is so important, and why, TikTok brought out so many interesting creatives. And the idea now is that we've become not attracted to the normal like PRing of ourselves, which is why you see people who are doing things so much more authentically on social media are getting so much more, traction, right? They're getting so much more traction in general of their fan base. So when I would think of it, I would say, okay, the commercial, this is just my thinking. That's why I said, like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like the commercial country space, pop country has been X for so long. The people that come around and do it different, now people are going to start becoming attracted to it because it's been said and done for so long. It might be the exact thing that we want.
Oh yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I've noticed recently people experimenting with the country genre, whether it is, bringing in the pop elements, or like more artists are using samples, which is not a country thing to do, or like beats and things like that. I mean, Maren Morris, she's doing some really cool things with her stuff, but there's still like a country core to it. So, and Chris Stapleton, he's bringing in blues, he's bringing in soul. Like, it's not just pop. Like, there's so many different genres coming in and kind of experimenting and changing it and growing it, where it's not just one single solid sound and we all sound that way, because it is boring. And it's fine if you do want to sound that way, but to be unique and to be an artist is to be different. So it's like do you do it to fit in, to get played on the radio, or do you do this crazy weird thing that you feel but you're not sure if other people will feel it or it's accepted or whatever? But you are right. I think right now we're definitely more open to it and like looking for it. And that's the kind of thing that is blowing up on TikTok and Spotify, and the labels are like, what is happening? And they're signing people from TikTok because it's resonating with people. And I don't think that they understand maybe. And they're like, well, okay, they have good numbers, so people must like it. So it's almost become like the new A&R.
That's about So listen, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but that song that did go up on TikTok, I think this would be an amazing time if you wanted to play it. I think a lot of people would love to hear it.
Let's do it,
right? I think this would be a really cool way to add this in, because we've heard so much about you. I think everybody enjoyed the conversation. Let's see some of this musical talent.
And conveniently, I have my guitar.
Conveniently.
Has my name on it and everything, and then has a wolf on the headstock for leader of the pack. Just in case people forget who I am. Okay. All right. So this is called Leader of the Pack. It is on Spotify and Apple, and hopefully all the places where people stream music. So I haven't played it in a while.
I'm excited.
if I mess it up. Me in the dark, out in the woods. You thought you could keep me from the stars. They're closing in now. I can hear how you left me for dead, with nothing else to be said. So give me a second, I'll set traps and I'll stop my way to the top. Ain't gonna stop till she up and spew out. I want around to save you now. If you throw me to the wolves, I'll come back, come back. Come back, the leader of the pack. The leader of the pack. So give me a second thought. Set your traps and I'm just coming. I'm on my way to the top. Ain't gonna stop till I speed up and speed well. I'm running around, see the town. If you brought me to the wolves, I'll come back, come back. I'll come back, I'm leader of the pack.
Love it. Love it.
That was like spit a little bit on that last chorus. It was like, whoa.
It's all right. That was all the passion coming out. It was amazing.
It was. Good thing you weren't physically here.
that was an amazing song. Oh my God. I mean, that was great. That was great.
Thank you. There's like so I wanted there to be so with the pause in the chorus, if you throw me to the wolves, I heard howling wolves there for some reason. And so we actually have samples of like a real wolf howling in that part in the song, which is really cool. Like there's a big wolf howling there and it's real. So that was pretty cool. That was fun.
That's awesome. What an amazing song. So cool.
I'm glad you like it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's amazing. Well, so after that amazing performance, where can people find you? Where can people listen to more of your music? Look you up on social, Instagram, things like that.
So I think pretty much everything is just my name. So it's Kendal, 1L, Conrad with a C. Other than my Facebook page, the URL is Kendal Conrad Music. But like TikTok and YouTube and Twitter, I'm on all of the things. And my music should be on all the things. It's under the same name, same thing. So I hope it's easy to find.
Yes, I'm sure it is. And we'll link all of it, by the way. So it won't just be up to that. We'll link all of it on the description. And we'll put all of your contact info on like an end screen as well. So people will have no issue finding that. Listen, Kendal, this has been probably the most entertaining and amazing episode we've had so far. So I genuinely
How long has it been?
About 50 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes, it's mutual. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was interesting.
I'm glad. No, and everybody else that's listening and watching, I know for a fact has enjoyed it. So thank you so much for taking the time to sharing your beautiful music and obviously sharing your story and everything that you've come up with and sharing that with everybody. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Took a shot in the dark to make my own lane. I think that I'm better go my own way, so I didn't. Now I'm on my own, yeah, I'm on my way. Keep my head up till I find my place, yeah, I'm on my